sir. Where did you get that uniform?
This is in my uniform. I'm a captain with this airline. Here's my ID. Check your system.
20 minutes earlier, a white pilot had walked through the same parking lot wearing the same uniform. Nobody stopped him. Nobody asked where he got his uniform. Nobody questioned whether he belonged there. He walked to his car, threw his flight bag in the trunk, and drove away. Routine, normal, unremarkable. But when Captain David Richardson walked through that same lot 20 minutes later, 3 security officers appeared. Golf cart, radios, suspicion written across their faces. Same uniform, same parking lot, same company, different skin color, completely different treatment. David knew the statistics. He had read the Pilot Association reports. Black pilots were stopped by airline security at rates 340% higher than white pilots. Same credentials, same uniforms, wildly different experiences. He had hoped he would never become one of those statistics. Wednesday, 2:17 p.m., the hope died. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like this need to be told, and your subscription helps us keep exposing the truth. Captain David Richardson was 38 years old, 12 years with the airline, 8,000 flight hours logged, qualified on both the 737 and the 787. 0 safety incidents, 0 passenger complaints. A promotion to captain just 6 months earlier. His record was spotless. His credentials were impeccable. His uniform was identical to every other pilot at the airline, but his skin was black, and apparently that was all that mattered. That Wednesday afternoon, David had just finished a pre-flight briefing for his 6 p.m. departure to Chicago, a routine red-eye. He had done this route 47 times. He knew the weather patterns, the alternate airports, the fuel requirements. Everything was standard. He left the operations building and walked toward the employee parking lot. His car was in Section B, row 12, the same spot he parked in most days. His parking pass hung from the rearview mirror, clearly displaying his name and employee number. The November air was cool. The sun was still up but fading. The lot was moderately busy with employees coming and going for shift changes. David was thinking about grabbing coffee before his flight, maybe calling his wife to check on their daughter's soccer game. Normal thoughts. Routine day. Then he noticed the security golf cart following him. At first, he thought nothing of it. Security patrolled regularly, but the cart stayed 30 feet behind him, matching his pace. When he slowed down, it slowed down. When he turned toward his row, it followed. David's situational awareness kicked in. Years of pilot training taught you to notice patterns, anomalies, threats. This felt wrong. He reached his car, put his hand on the door handle. The golf cart pulled up directly behind his vehicle, blocking him in. 3 security officers got out. David turned around. He kept his expression neutral, professional. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The lead officer was a man in his mid-30s. Name tag read, Robert Chen. He looked at David's uniform, looked at his face, looked back at the uniform. His expression was all suspicion, 0 professional courtesy. "Sir, we need to see some identification." David's internal alarm system went to yellow alert. Not red. Not yet. But something was definitely off about this. "Sure," he said calmly. He reached slowly for his wallet in his back pocket. "Employee ID, okay?" "Where did you get that uniform?" Chen asked. The question landed like turbulence. Unexpected. Wrong. Completely inappropriate. David paused, his hand on his wallet. "I'm sorry?" "The uniform. Where did you get it?" Now David understood exactly what was happening. This was not a routine security check. This was racial profiling, and it was being conducted by employees of the same airline that employed him. He had 2 choices: escalate emotionally or document methodically. He chose documentation. "I'm Captain David Richardson," he said clearly, his voice steady. "I've worked for this airline since 2009, employee number 8,847. I'm currently qualified on the 737 and the 787. Would you like to verify my employment status?" Chen shook his head. "Anyone can claim to be an employee. We've had issues with stolen uniforms. I need you to explain how you came into possession of airline property." Airline property? His uniform. The one issued to him by the company after his promotion. The one with his name embroidered inside the collar. The one he had earned through years of training and flight hours. And they were treating it like stolen merchandise. Do you think this same question would have been asked if David was white? Drop your answer in the comments. David pulled out his phone, held it up so the camera was visible. "I'm going to record this interaction for documentation purposes." "Sir, put the phone away," Chen said, his tone hardening. "I have every right to record in a public parking lot," David replied calmly. "I'm documenting what appears to be racial profiling." "This isn't about race," one of the other officers said quickly. "Then what is it about?" David asked. "Because 20 minutes ago I watched Captain Mike Stevens walk through this exact lot in the exact same uniform. You didn't stop him. You didn't question him. You didn't demand he prove he had a right to wear his uniform. The only difference between him and me is the color of our skin." The officers exchanged glances. They had not expected this level of pushback. "We're just doing our jobs," Chen said. "Your job is to provide security," David said, "not to harass employees based on racial assumptions. Now, I've identified myself. I've offered to provide credentials. Either articulate a specific policy violation I've committed, or step aside and let me access my vehicle." Chen hesitated. This was not going the way he had planned. What happened next would become the centerpiece of a federal discrimination lawsuit. Chen pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I need backup at Employee Lot B, Section 12. I have an individual refusing to cooperate with a security check." David's phone was still recording. "For the record, I am cooperating. I've identified myself as Captain David Richardson, employee number 8,847. I've offered my credentials. I'm asking what specific violation justifies this detention." "You're being detained for suspected possession of stolen property," Chen said. There it was, on camera. A security officer accusing a black pilot of stealing his own uniform. "Based on what evidence?" David asked. "Based on the fact that you can't explain how you obtained airline property." "I've explained 3 times that I'm employed by this airline. The uniform was issued to me. I can provide documentation. What more do you need?" Silence. Chen had no answer, because there was no good answer. The only reason for this stop was the color of David's skin. 2 more security vehicles arrived, 5 officers total, now surrounding 1 pilot in a parking lot. David remained calm. His training kicked in. In emergency situations, you follow procedures, you document, you stay composed. You don't let emotions override judgment. He pulled out his employee badge, held it up. "This is my official airline identification. Employee number 8,847, issued by this company, valid through December 2023. My photo is clearly visible. My credentials are clearly stated. Now either arrest me for a crime you can articulate, or allow me to leave." One of the newly arrived officers, an older man with sergeant stripes, looked at the badge, looked at David, looked at Chen, with an expression that said, "What the hell did you just do?" "Is there a problem here?" the sergeant asked Chen. "I stopped him for verification," Chen said. "He was acting suspicious." "Acting suspicious how?" the sergeant asked. "He was walking to his car." Even the other officers looked uncomfortable now. The sergeant took David's badge, examined it, handed it back. "Captain Richardson, I apologize for this inconvenience. You're free to go." "I appreciate that," David said. "But I need all officer names and badge numbers involved in this stop. I'll be filing a formal complaint." The sergeant nodded. He understood exactly what was coming. It was 2:31 p.m. The encounter had lasted 14 minutes. By 3 p.m., David was in the airline's human resources office. He filed a formal discrimination complaint. 3 pages, detailed timeline, witness statements from other employees who had seen the confrontation. He also did something else. He pulled security footage request forms. The parking lot had cameras. Everything that happened was recorded from multiple angles. By 4 p.m., the airline's legal department had been notified. They requested copies of David's documentation. By 5 p.m., Robert Chen had been called into his supervisor's office. By 6 p.m., David was in the cockpit of his 787, running pre-flight checks for Chicago, professional, focused, but his mind was already 3 steps ahead, planning the legal strategy. Thursday morning, 8 a.m. The airline's chief of security reviewed the parking lot footage. What he saw made his stomach drop. The footage showed David walking normally to his car. No suspicious behavior, no erratic movements, just a pilot in uniform going about his day. It showed the security cart following him, deliberately, tracking his movements. It showed 3 officers surrounding him, 5 by the end. And most damning, it showed Captain Mike Stevens walking through the same lot 23 minutes earlier. White pilot. Same uniform, same company. 0 interaction with security. The pattern was undeniable. The discrimination was documented. The liability was massive. Thursday afternoon, 2 p.m., David's attorney sent a formal letter to the airline. It outlined the incident. It referenced Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. It mentioned punitive damages. It gave the airline 48 hours to respond. The airline tried to settle immediately. They offered $50,000 and a written apology. David's attorney laughed and hung up. Friday morning, the story leaked to the media. Black pilot racially profiled by own airline security. The headline spread across aviation forums, social media, news outlets. By Friday afternoon, the airline was in crisis mode. Stock price dropped 2%. Passengers were canceling flights. The pilots' union was demanding answers. Robert Chen was placed on administrative leave. An investigation was opened into the security department's practices, but the real damage was just beginning. David's complaint triggered a full audit of security practices. Investigators pulled 3 years of data, every stop, every verification, every interaction. The pattern was damning. Black and Hispanic pilots were stopped at rates 340% higher than white pilots. Asian pilots at 180% higher. White pilots were almost never stopped without visible violations. The discrimination was systematic, embedded in culture, ignored by management. Investigators found internal emails joking about checking the diversity hires. Training materials emphasized vigilance with unusual employees. Code words, plausible deniability, but data did not lie. The parking lot footage eliminated doubt. David was not isolated. He was the one with knowledge, resources, and courage to fight back. Within 2 weeks, 12 other pilots came forward. All minorities, all questioned, all made to feel like criminals. The airline fired Chen and 2 others, implemented new training, issued public statements. But David's attorney was building a federal case. 30 days after the parking lot incident, the lawsuit was filed. David Richardson versus the airline and its security contractor. Federal court. Civil rights violations. Hostile work environment. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages requested, $15 million. The evidence was overwhelming. Parking lot footage showing the discriminatory stop. Security data showing the pattern of racial profiling. David's voice recording capturing every word. Witness statements from other pilots. internal company emails revealing conscious bias. The airline's legal team reviewed everything and came to one conclusion: they had no defense. They could not explain why David was stopped when white pilots were not. They could not justify the accusation of stolen property. They could not defend the pattern of discrimination revealed in their own data. 6 months of legal maneuvering followed. Depositions, discovery, expert witnesses. The airline tried every procedural tactic to delay or dismiss. Nothing worked. Finally, mediation. The airline came with a settlement offer, $3.8 million. No admission of wrongdoing in the written agreement, but mandatory reforms included as conditions. David's attorney presented the offer. David thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. He accepted, not because of the money, because of the reforms. The settlement required complete overhaul of security training with mandatory bias recognition, monthly statistical audits of all security stops with public reporting, independent civilian oversight of security operations, zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory conduct with immediate termination, annual review of security practices by civil rights organizations, and $500,000 dedicated to diversity and inclusion training across all departments. The airline also agreed to create a confidential reporting system for discrimination complaints that bypass direct supervisors. These were not cosmetic changes. These were structural reforms that would affect how the airline operated for years. If you think these reforms should be standard across all airlines, type yes in the comments. Robert Chen never worked security again. Background checks revealed the lawsuit. No firm would hire him. He took a warehouse job at half his previous salary. The security supervisor who dismissed complaints was terminated. The director resigned. Both enabled the culture. But consequences extended beyond security. The airline's COO was forced out for failing to ensure non-discriminatory practices. The HR head was reassigned for treating complaints as isolated incidents. 6 officers terminated, 12 on probation. Mandatory retraining for everyone. The security contractor lost their $12 million annual agreement, replaced with a bias-free specialist company. 6 months after the settlement, David gave one interview. He spoke to an aviation industry publication. His words were measured but powerful. "I didn't file this lawsuit for money," he said. "I filed it because I knew if it happened to me, it was happening to others, and I had the resources and knowledge to fight back. Most people don't." He continued, "I'm a captain with 12 years of experience. I have my own attorney. I understand civil rights law. I knew to record the interaction. I knew which agencies to contact. But what about the first officers who are just starting their careers? What about the mechanics and the flight attendants and the gate agents who experience this and don't have my advantages?" He paused. "The uniform means something. Those wings on my chest mean I've earned the right to fly. I've proven my competence thousands of times. But to those security officers, none of that mattered. They looked at my skin color and decided I was a thief. That's not just wrong. That's dangerous. Because discrimination in aviation doesn't just hurt feelings. It undermines the professionalism and trust that keep passengers safe." The interview was viewed 1.2 million times. 20 minutes. That is how long separated 2 pilots walking through the same parking lot, both wearing the same uniform, both working for the same company, both qualified to fly the same aircraft. One walked through without incident. The other was surrounded by 5 security officers and accused of theft. The only difference was melanin. But that difference cost the airline $3.8 million. Cost 6 people their careers. Cost the security contractor a $12 million contract. And forced an entire industry to confront discrimination it had been ignoring. David Richardson did not set out to be a civil rights advocate. He just wanted to do his job, fly his routes, go home to his family. But when 3 security officers decided his black skin made him suspicious, they gave him no choice. He could have stayed silent, accepted the humiliation, moved on. Instead, he documented, he filed complaints, he hired attorneys, he fought back. And he won, not just for himself, for every pilot who came after him, for every employee who deserved to be treated with dignity, for everyone who has ever been judged by their skin color rather than their competence. The uniform was real. The credentials were real. The discrimination was real. And the accountability, for once, was real too. 3 security officers looked at a black man in a pilot's uniform and saw a thief. The legal system looked at the evidence and saw a $3.8 million mistake. Captain David Richardson still flies, still wears his uniform, still parks in Lot B. But now, when security sees him, they see a captain, not a suspect. That is what $3.8 million bought. Not just money, respect. If this story opened your eyes to something important, hit that like button and subscribe. These stories need to be told. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Justice does not sleep, and neither do we.